Today we're going to be talking about working with existing images. For your background you're going to be creating from scratch. So hopefully you've started to think about where you're going to go with what your background's going to be, what your image is going to be. For the most part, your background you're going to create from scratch, but your existing image is what you're going to use to start making your product. I'm going to be going through resolution and copying and pasting, and how to edit your image to make it your own. Keep in mind, you can easily find an image that is going to be almost close to exactly what you want for your product. However, that's essentially going to be copyright infringement or plagiarism. I have started a background for my advertising. Your background does a couple of things. It starts to focus someone's attention to where you're going to put the most important thing, which is your product, and as well as to some degree might start to create who your target audience is or establish some kind of theme for what your product is. So my product is M&M Pop. I have a more exciting name for that. However, the basic concept is M&M popcorn. So I just did a Google search for a bucket of popcorn, and this is what I came up with. For your main product, you want to pay attention to the resolution. The resolution is going to essentially tell you how big or how small your image is. We set our resolution at 100 pixels per inch. So right now, if you did the math, this image is a little under 8 inches by a little over 10 inches. Now our document is 8.5 by 11. So this is actually almost as big as our entire document. Your product needs to be a third or more of your entire document. So you're going to be looking for something for your base image that's going to be at least 500 by 500. Now you're going to notice that some of the images have the writing across of it. This is what's called watermarking. I'm going to show you how to remove a lot of the watermarking because you are going to be substantially changing this to make this your own. Once you find your image, it's as easy as a copy and paste. However, the paste part is a little bit different than what you are used to doing. So I'm just going to right click, copy my image, go into Photoshop, and I'm going to need to paste. Many of you will be tempted to right click. It's not going to let you. However, edit and paste, or Control V if you know the shortcuts. Now it's very large and it came with a lot of different things that we don't want. So that's what we're going to start to work with. I'm going to use my Move tool first because my product is actually too large. So I'm going to grab from a corner and drag towards the center, which will keep my aspect ratio so that I'm not distorting it if I grab it from a side. Now if you look at my background kind of shows you exactly where I'm bringing the person's eye to. So I'm going to be having it down here towards the bottom. Your product should be a third or more of your entire advertisement. So if my rulers are on, I can see that I am definitely about half the size from top to bottom and 2/3 the size from left to right. Now that I have it the right size, we need to work on some of the other things on there. If you look at the order on the WebQuest, so we talked about resolution, copying and pasting. Now we're going to start to edit our images. There are several different ways that you can do this. The first thing that you can do is use the eraser. Now that you are working with layers, your eraser is going to work the way that you think that it should. Here is your second layer now that you've pasted it in. I'm going to double click and I'm going to rename it as my bucket so that I know what's in there. And then I'm going to come over here to my tools. First thing I'm going to go is to my eraser, and making sure that I am in this layer, I'm going to start to erase the unwanted pieces. The eraser erases just like an eraser does. It erases anything you go over, so you need to be careful. You might not want to remove certain things, but this white area around it is definitely something that I want to erase. The eraser tool is useful, especially when you're erasing things that have multiple colors. Alright, so I'm erasing this bottom piece, this black piece, because it also has white writing. So let's see what other options we have to manipulate. Second thing says selecting a color with the magic wand. Now, this tool, the magic wand, works best when working with your single colors. This doesn't work as well for multiple colors. Let's move on to the magic wand. Now, the color that I want to get rid of is this white background. So when I click, notice that it selects all the white. Now, it will only select the white that is not broken by another border or boundary. You'll notice that it's selected because it has what I call the dancing ants. And once you have it selected, you can then hit delete on your keyboard and you'll be able to deselect it. So that is quite useful to get rid of all of one color. Your fourth and final best friend, deselecting. If you have an area selected and you haven't moved, or you're ready to move on, so I'm ready to move on and start to get rid of some of the other watermarking that is on here, I need to deselect. Right click and deselect before I switch off of my magic wand. If you keep something selected, you won't be able to move on. So if I went over here to the brush and I started to try and paint, you can notice it's not going to let me because I have this area deselected. I need to be on the magic wand, I need to right click and deselect. So now I pretty much have it cleaned up pretty well. I have that little tiny piece of black on the end. You notice that it's selecting everything. So instead of using my magic wand, I'm going to zoom in. And this is where your zoom tool is going to be quite useful. I'm going to go in here with my eraser and I'm just going to be real careful and erase that little black piece that I don't want. Go back to my zoom tool, choose fit screen. Moving on, let's see what else we can do. Painting over it after selecting with the perfect color with the eyedropper. This is one of the most useful tools when trying to get rid of the watermarking. So I'm gonna again zoom in so I can see what I'm doing, and you can see that I have all these little lines as well as the words and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna actually start up here. I can't erase. I'm going to go to my paintbrush. Now, I can't erase because if I did, then I would remove the actual bucket. I'm going to paint over it. So I'm going to click on my fourth color right here. This is where the eyedropper comes in. I talked about the eyedropper earlier. I need to get that exact color. So I'm going to move over here and I'm going to click and I'm going to click OK. And now when I go to paint, it will paint away the color. So now I can go in here and I can remove all of these little marks, and you can notice that I actually have the watermarking in a lot of other different places. So I'm just going to remove a little bit of it here and a little bit of it there. Go to my dropper tool, I'm going to click over here and I'm going to paint this out. And I'm going to go quickly, but you would go much more carefully to be able to remove all of the things that you need to remove. The paintbrush is useful for removing medium things that have, for the most part, one color that's easy to cover up and erase. So let's see what other options we have. Again, moving on, blocking it out. If you have a lot of things to cover up, and obviously you can see, let me zoom out a little bit more. There is quite a bit for me to cover up, and with this face and everything like that. What I'm going to do with this, the reason why I'm not so worried about where the face is because I want to take an M&M and put the face of one of the M&M characters on the bucket so that I have now branded it with a M&M character, so it looks more like what my product is going to be, M&M popcorn. So I went out, found an image that I liked. I like the way that his face is. I only really want his face. I don't need to have everything else. I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy and edit and paste, and it's really large, which is okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily make the layer opacity lower so I can see what I have going on behind it. So I can take my move tool and move this down and position it how I need it to be. It looks actually to be a little too large, so I'm going to position it down. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of line up the eyes as best I can. And then once I have that and I'm happy with it, I'm going to bring my opacity back up and I'm going to erase pieces of the image that should not be seen. So around here across the top lip, I'll erase, see the bucket edge, and where the is coming off of the side of the bucket, erase across the bottom part. Need to decide whether or not I really want to keep this striping. And since I have the bucket behind it as red, do I want the front to be blue or do I want the M&M to be red? I kind of like the idea of keeping the blue and going from there. All the different ways that I can make some changes. As I've come to decide that I really want to change my bucket to the blue instead of the red, let's see what other options we have. We have color changing, so I'm going to skip over smudging for a moment and I'm going to go to the color change. So I have this blue and I'm going to go down here to my bucket and I need to change it to the blue of the M&M. I'm going to make this temporarily invisible and I need to go through and choose all of the red in here. So let me zoom myself back out a little bit. And I'm going to use my magic wand, and my magic wand just selects different areas of color, and you notice as I'm selecting, it's not selecting enough. One of the options of the magic wand is tolerance. Tolerance, as it says, a range of shades when sampling colors. This allows me to increase or decrease the number of shades of red that I'm selecting. So 40 seems to be too low by a lot, so I am going to bring it up to 90 and I'm going to click again, and notice it selects the entire rim at the top. And I'm thinking I might actually want to keep some of the red and change some of them to each of the different M&M colors. So I'm not going to worry about the red strip. Grab this one and keep both of these selected. I'm going to hold down shift to select this. So shift, I'm going to do them all just to show you how to change the color. So I'm holding down shift and I'm clicking on all the little red pieces, and shift allows me to add to my colors. We're going to use something called the enhance menu. So I'm going to go up to enhance, adjust color, adjust hue and saturation, and there's 3 different choices. And I'm going to start at the bottom. Lightness, again, if you remember from art and if you remember with color selection, lightness adds 2 things. If I increase my lightness, it's going to add white and change something to white. If I decrease my lightness, it's going to start to add black, and eventually it will become all black. Saturation makes it brighter, or it adds gray. I'm going to turn these back to 0 because these aren't what I'm going to change. And I'm going to go to hue. Hue, if you take a look at these 2 bars, this is what you start at and this is what you want it to get to. So if I'm starting at red and I want to change it to blue, I'm going to drag my hue over, and you'll notice that bottom bar starts to shift over until my blue is under my red. Now, the advantage of using hue and saturation you'll notice that there's two actual different colors of blue going on in here. It changes them both exactly in the same degree as everything else, so that the blue looks seamless. I could have used my bucket fill tool or something of that nature to change the color, but I'm going to change it to all blue for right now. I'm going to bring my darkness down a little bit, just so I can kind of match it up to the other blue. Bring this back and see how well I did. Come back over here, I can see that my blue is a little too blue, and kind of really starting to play around with it until I kind of become happy with whatever color blue I have going on here. Happy with that. Now remember, your last best friend, deselecting. So I'm going to go to my magic wand, and I'm going to right click and deselect. And you can see that I still have some more work to do. I really need to kind of start to blend some things in. Temporarily, I'm going to make this one invisible. Talk about the smudge tool, the one that I skipped over. Let me zoom in. The smudge tool will help you get rid of these lines. The smudge tool are things that you want to, small things to make small corrections to. Kind of like I made the mistake here and I need to fix it. So I'm going to go to my smudge tool, and remember, if you haven't changed your smudge tool, right click on one tool up from the bottom, and there's your smudge tool. I'm going to make my brush only as big as I need it. 10 is still a little too big. And the smudge tool will do exactly what it looks like. It's like taking your finger through wet paint and smearing it over something else. On the wrong layer. Take this and smudge. Take the blue, smudge it over top of that. I'm going to smudge it over the line to smear it out. Again, it's not something you want to do with a major change, because you're going to see it. So it'd be a very drastic change, and it's not something that you want to overdo. You could really create a disaster in this smeary look. So you want to be careful with your smudge tool. You don't want to overuse your smudge tool. So painting over it will cover up a medium amount of things. Blocking covers up a lot of things to cover up. Smudging something out, little tiny corrections and fixes. This will allow you to do a color change. The magic wand will allow you to delete things. You need to make sure that you remember how to deselect. Right click, deselect, but you must be on a selection tool to use that.